have a TikTok app on my phone, and my phone is on my home Wi-Fi network. Does TikTok access that network?
It will have to access the network to get connections to the internet, if that's the question.
So unelected corporations having access to our information to change our behavior, get us to buy things, threaten democracy, or keep us addicted to their apps is okay because they're American, it's fine. But yeah, just go ahead and ban the one that those liberal kids are using because China. What do you do when you're old and white and Republican and rich and some teenagers that you dismissed as stupid and phone obsessed show up in droves to polling stations to stop your party from gaining full-scale power? You'd probably be surprised when the app that you dismissed as unproductive brain candy was at the center of a powerful youth culture that was giving young people in red states hope and community, educating people about topics you tried to ban from school curriculums, and giving regular people a voice where they had none. If you're watching this, you probably live in a society ruled by older people, aka a gerontocracy. In the US specifically, even though baby boomers only make up 21% of the US population, they make up 45% of the House and 66% of the Senate. Old white guys are better represented in government than every other demographic, and there's a new generation that's gaining political power that goes directly against the values of the old white guys. Gen Z is the most diverse, most educated, and most liberal generation in history. This generation grew up with smartphones in our hands against the backdrop of a climate crisis that threatens the existence of the human race, multiple recessions, terrorist attacks, and a global pandemic that changed the world. These events, along with the fact that we have access to so much more information than any other generation before, have shaped our experiences of the world. And we've been witness to an older generation that has proven themselves to be largely incapable of rising to the challenge of solving these problems. Our generation cares deeply about social issues, climate issues, reproductive justice, and gun violence, but these issues only seem to be getting worse. As a result, millennials and Gen Z are the first generations in the last century not to follow the trend of becoming more conservative as we get older. On top of it, young people are quickly becoming a political force that's hard to ignore. Youth voter turnout was its highest in 3 decades in the US 2022 midterm elections, and that vote held off a red wave that was largely anticipated. By 2026, millennials and Gen Z will make up the majority of the American electorate. All of this together means that young people are a considerable threat to conservatism, and the way that we're doing things, the platforms that we're using, go directly against conservative values, and they are scared. This decade, it's crunch time, and conservatives will do everything they can to hold on to power. In many states in 2023, voter suppression laws have been passed, and conservatives are pushing to ban TikTok.
It gets its way. TikTok's time is up.
In this video, I'm going to argue that these actions are all part of a wider agenda to suppress youth power, and TikTok, I would argue, is at the center of it all. The people who hold political power at the moment grew up at a time of relative peace and prosperity, with of course a few blips here and there, but no one wants to talk about the Cold War. For Gen Z's parents and grandparents, if you got a decent job and you were decently loyal, you could afford a home and a comfortable retirement. For their generation, capitalism was a good thing that brought them opportunities, freedom, and choices. If you followed the rules of the society and the capitalist system, you were rewarded, depending on your demographic, of course.
That generation growing up through that period, the first post-war generation of young people, was being raised in I'm talking about middle-class white kids. They were being raised in a period of affluence that was unprecedented.
So Gen Z's parents and grandparents are usually conservative because their world worked for them, so they want to preserve that world. Conservative beliefs are rooted in the idea that politics should focus on preserving traditional values and institutions. Believers in conservatism think political change should happen gradually and slowly and over time, and that politicians shouldn't seek to transform society drastically, even if to correct societal ills. Conservatives also tend not to be very optimistic about human nature, believing kind of along a Christian line of thought that humans are naturally prone to violence and self-interest. Edmund Burke, a philosopher considered the father of modern conservatism, conservatism, said people need a sufficient restraint upon their passions, which it is the office of government to bridle and subdue. So if you fundamentally think humans are bad and need a system to rein them in, and stuff has generally worked out well for you, then you'll want to believe in a value system that preserves what you know to be true about the world. People tend to get a bit more conservative as they get older. It's unclear whether these effects are due to aging or just life events and having more to lose, but conservative political parties across the world have usually been able to rely on people getting older to replenish their voting base. There are some hypotheses that older people tend to be more comfortable with stability as they age, and it is true, like according to some scientific reviews, intellectual curiosity and open-mindedness to change tend to wane as you get older, and older brains are actually more likely to resort to black and white thinking, which can lead to prejudice, and they're less tolerant of ambiguity, needing more stability, security, and familiarity. Of course, we can't generalize all older people, and older people are also victims of conservative lawmaking. But the science doesn't lie. The older you are, the more likely you are to be conservative, because it just feels safer. It preserves what you already know, and sometimes the unknown, even if it does turn out to be better, is just more scary because it's unknown, it's unfamiliar. Unfortunately for today's conservatives, the society of today has never changed so rapidly or demanded from us more intellectual curiosity. And that's why millennials are the first generation in history not to follow this trend of becoming more conservative as they age. The older people are terrified, scared of losing power, scared of letting go of a familiar set of rules, and scared to accept that the world they once knew no longer exists. Okay, so we already know that as Gen Z gets older, we're becoming harder and harder to ignore politically. Every day that passes, more and more people turn 18, and these people are more likely to vote blue and actually to turn out to vote in the first place. And in a few years, we are going to make up the majority of the American electorate. And if you're not from the US, the same thing probably holds true for your country. Like, this decade is crunch time. Unlike older generations who get their news from radio and TV and traditional news media, young people overwhelmingly get our news from YouTube and TikTok. And even beyond that, there's no denying that TikTok is a significant cultural force in youth culture. Its popularity during the pandemic catapulted multiple people to stratospheric fame, and TikTok trends have changed the face of the music industry, the fashion industry, the beauty industry, the English language, education, and yeah, politics. The power of TikTok, and the thing that sets it apart from kind of other social media apps, is its algorithm and the ease of creating content on the app. Anyone can create a video really easily and go viral regardless of their original follower count. Politically, this has had profound effects. TikTok has helped democratize having a voice, reaching people, and finding other people who share your views. In one article I read while I was doing research for this video, a TikTok user who lives in a red state said how much hope TikTok gave them when they felt politically isolated. I was feeling hopeless to vote because I'm like, I don't really see a point in this, you know? Who cares? But all of a sudden, I post videos on TikTok and I'm flooded with all these amazing comments. It brought me a lot of hope and passion to want to get out to vote. Unlike traditional news media, which are entwined with certain economic and political agendas, and where those of a certain demographic are more likely to get jobs and have a voice, TikTok just feels much more grassroots. TikTok's powerful algorithm also allows political messages to reach more audiences and drive more engagement than other platforms. Next Gen America, a progressive group dedicated to mobilizing young voters, partnered with TikTok influencers for the 2022 midterms and reported seeing much better results than Instagram posts or social media ads. People have turned to TikTok as a platform to educate others, especially in the face of red states banning certain topics from school curriculums. When Florida passed legislation to ban lessons from AP African American classes that would have included intersectionality, Black queer studies, and the Black Lives Matter movement, this creator took to TikTok to educate people on these issues. No longer do you have to rely on the education system or go to an expensive liberal arts college to learn about these topics. It's served to you on a platter on your feed where you're already going for entertainment. You don't even need to seek it out, and it's just distills into 60 seconds everything you need to know. Is it any wonder legislators are absolutely losing their minds over the lack of control control they have over what people are learning. TikTok is a Gen Z app. Over 60% of regular users of TikTok are part of Gen Z. But when you dig deeper into the user demographics, it gets even more interesting. When compared to the general population and to other social media users, TikTok's users skew towards young Black and female users, i.e. the very people whose existence threatens conservatism and who overwhelmingly vote blue. Black people and culture in general have had a considerable impact and influence on youth culture through using TikTok, and they don't get their due for that, but that's a conversation for another day. Because of its user base, TikTok content does tend to skew more liberal, more enlightened, and more woke. One study, which used AI to measure conservative and liberal content on the app, found that TikTok is a left-leaning app. There's much more liberal content on the app. I paid attention to my TikTok feed in the past week for this video, and I've been served remarkable content about upcycling, spiritually enlightened content about psychedelics, this one video about Africa not being a poor continent, and of course plenty of anti-capitalist content. And I even post on TikTok, and anti-capitalist content does amazing on TikTok. These pieces of content are not from people I chose to follow. The algorithm served these videos to me on a platter, which is definitely powerful and definitely different to other social media platforms, because it really means I can consume more information that resonates with me and, to be honest, like makes me even more liberal than I already am. And even the way people use TikTok goes directly against conservative values, like not just the content, but just the fact that it's so fast moving, it's constantly changing, like trends come and go in like a day. The people you see when you scroll, like it's very, very diverse. And yeah, the content is largely liberal. And to be honest with you, like generally, I think optimistic about human nature. No wonder these conservatives are scrambling to ban it. So we already know that conservatives are spooked by the power of TikTok. What else are they doing? Like they are doing other things to suppress youth political power. Just this year, 32 states have introduced 150 voter suppression laws, which disproportionately impact young people. Some of these laws include prohibiting student IDs as viable voting ID, removing polling sites on college campuses, racial gerrymandering, which means kind of redrawing district lines to make sure people can't vote for their preferred candidate, and shortening mail-in ballot deadlines. They've become so brazen about doing this that recently a top GOP lawyer went to a donor rally and openly said it was too easy for college students to vote, like they could just roll out of bed and vote, which she said that if Republicans are going to have a fighting chance in 2024, they're going to need to solve this problem. When you take all of this into account, it's hard to believe conservatives aren't pushing for a ban of TikTok to stop the political power of youth, to stop the rise of liberalism, and in their words, have a fighting chance of winning 2024. And you know what? It's pretty genius. At this point in history, Americans have never had such a negative view of China. I think it's 83% of Americans have a negative view of China. So it's pretty easy, I think, to get people on board with their agenda. So let's get into a little bit how concerned we should be about TikTok's Chinese ownership. The government and media seem pretty united on the reasons for banning TikTok. Chief among them, the concerns around the Chinese Communist Party having access to TikTok user data. TikTok is owned by a Chinese company, ByteDance, and in China, the CCP can at any time demand access to company details if they just choose to do so, like at any time. So the concern is that there's no guarantee that TikTok isn't handing over this data to the CCP. So yeah, I'd say these concerns about the CCP having this access aren't unfounded. The Chinese government is notorious for subjecting their citizens to intrusive surveillance, and while there isn't any evidence that they have access to users' data, the US government is, I guess, understandably concerned about what they could do with this data. On top of this, TikTok has been blamed in the past for excessive or intrusive data harvesting, but actually, and I searched far and wide for this, TikTok actually doesn't gather any more intrusive data than any other social media platform. They collect data about your email address, phone number, age, search and browsing history on the app, information about what's in the photos and videos you upload, your device clipboard, and they use tracking pixels to track your activity on the internet. We agree to hand over some of this information in exchange for using these apps for free. These apps then use this data to sell advertising, and yeah, the more granular this data, the more targeted the advertising can be, which is really useful for companies advertising on these apps. And if you needed more convincing, I found this article on CNN that said TikTok may collect an extensive amount of data, much of it quietly, but as far as researchers can tell, it isn't any more invasive or illegal than what other US tech companies do. One of the most notorious cases of a tech company allowing user information to be used for unsavory ends is Facebook. Cambridge Analytica, a political consulting firm, was able to create personality tests on Facebook to collect really personal data about Facebook users, and Facebook's lax rules around apps at the time allowed them to not only have access to the data of the people who answered the personality test, but also to their Facebook friends. So they had the extremely granular data of around 50 million Facebook users, and they're thought to have used this information to influence the election of Donald Trump to the presidency. If the CCP or TikTok was able to get their hands on data that was as granular as what Cambridge Analytica had, then of course there'd be reason for concern. But there's no evidence that that has happened or that it's even possible. Companies collecting and selling our personal data is part of a larger problem of living in a surveillance capitalist economy. Under this economy, big tech companies can exploit user information for huge amounts of profit, and seemingly as soon as something gets used for profit and they don't think about any of the other consequences, it's had dire political and economic consequences around the world already. Data is extremely powerful, but we shouldn't just be concerned about TikTok having access to our data. We should be concerned about all of these tech companies having access to our data. We need accountability and regulation for all of them, not just Chinese-owned apps. What is definitely concerning around TikTok is the issue of censorship. In certain countries, topics that go against the agenda of the CCP are banned or shadow banned. And there has been evidence that TikTok has censored LGBTQ+ and disabled content in the past. This is certainly worrying, but is it any more concerning than an American billionaire having this kind of power? Because they do. Another concern brought up, especially in this Congress hearing about TikTok, is about misinformation on the app. So around 20% of TikTok videos yield misinformation. And while there's no equivalent data for other social media platforms, one study showed that on Facebook, misinformation receives 6 times more engagement. Another study found that Facebook actually boosts misinformation because it does so well with users and drives so much engagement. This has meant that specifically right-wing misinformation is more ubiquitous on Facebook than misinformation from other political leanings. And the studies that I've just mentioned to you were actually halted by Facebook, who cancelled the Facebook accounts of the researchers, which stopped them from gathering more information for the study. I also found out that Facebook will not allow the US government access to find out the extent of misinformation on the platform. So we literally have no idea, and they won't let us see what the extent is. Like, that is worrying. And don't even get me started on Twitter. I mean, since Elon Musk acquired the platform, misinformation has been rampant. He introduced a paid blue check system, which means trust has basically gone out the window. And he absolutely gutted content moderation teams, which means it's very difficult to tell the truth from misinformation on the platform. And Musk himself retweets and boosts misinformation on Twitter. And one study from a think tank found that after acquiring Twitter, his interactions with right-wing content increased massively. And what's funny yet concerning is that a Pew Research Center poll from 2023 found that Republicans now think Twitter is better for democracy since Elon Musk acquired it. Again, when it comes to misinformation, it is not only a TikTok problem. The algorithm is another concern that's been brought up about TikTok. In that infamous Congress hearing, Democrat Paul Tonko said he was concerned about content portraying violence and suicide being targeted at younger viewers, especially those with mental health issues. He said TikTok's algorithm preys on vulnerable people's personal struggles should not be fueled for TikTok's profits. Now, this is a really valid and concerning point. Social media across the board uses algorithms to optimize for user retention. They want people to come back again and again and stay on the app. And this can lead to the amplification of harmful content and shocking content. Again, not just a TikTok problem. It can also lead to political polarization. The study I mentioned earlier that found that there was more liberal content on the app also found that there was an increased echo chamber effect for people with right-wing views on TikTok. So this means that people who use TikTok who already have right-wing views will see more right-wing content at a faster rate than those who have other views. But again, this is not just a TikTok problem. In 2021, whistleblowers found that Meta executives were shutting down measures that would stop misinformation from spreading on the platform. Apparently, the executives were afraid that these measures would alienate conservatives and make conservatives angry that they were being censored on the platform. Pro tip, if your content is so right-wing that it's misinformation, maybe you should rethink. Maybe just rethink that a little bit. According to the Washington Post, internal documents show Facebook research has found that for the most politically oriented 1 million American users, nearly 90% of the content that Facebook shows them is about politics and social issues. Those groups also receive the most misinformation, especially a set of users associated with mostly right-leaning content, who are shown one misinformation post out of every 40. So what I'm hearing here is misinformation is okay as long as it's right-wing, but it's only a concern if it's liberal. Make it make sense. If we're gonna paint a picture of TikTok being this evil Chinese app that wants to manipulate American people, we can't single it out. All of these social media platforms have massive problems with misinformation, supported by powerful algorithms with very real consequences that threaten democracy, contribute to polarization, and impact on people's health. American popular media largely seems to agree with lawmakers on the issue of TikTok. This specific article by The Economist, which by the way is billionaire owned, claims that banning TikTok is a uniting issue for everyone on the political spectrum. This article says that users on TikTok are potentially vulnerable to data collection, propaganda, and misinformation. And Mark Warner, a senator from Virginia, gave a quote for the article saying, "For all the critiques of the American-based platforms, at the end of the day, they don't report to the CIA and they don't report to the American government." Right. So unelected corporations having access to our information to change our behavior, get us to buy things, threaten democracy, or keep us addicted to their apps is okay because they're American, it's fine. But yeah, just go ahead and ban the one that those liberal kids are using because China. But, let me be clear, fears about China misusing this data aren't unreasonable. What I'm saying is that these lawmakers have no leg to stand on because none of the issues they've brought up are unique to TikTok, nor has there been any evidence so far of TikTok misusing user data.
But the Chinese government has that data. How can you promise that will move into the United States of America and be protected here?
Congresswoman, I have seen no evidence that the Chinese government has access to that data. They have never asked us. We have not provided.
Well, you know what? I find that actually preposterous.
Rather, these issues that they've brought up are symptoms of the massive amount of leeway that we've given to tech companies in general. And we already have tons of evidence that American tech companies have misused this data with profound impacts on our society. Governments need to step in to protect user information, but these pointed attacks and fear-mongering at TikTok reek of xenophobia and underneath seem like desperate attempts to curb the political and cultural power of the youth.
You keep talking about the industry. We're talking about TikTok here. We're talking about children dying. Do you know how many children have died because of this? Do you have any idea? Can you tell me?
It's so hard to believe that politicians who consistently vote against LGBTQ+ rights, abortion rights, gun laws, and who don't accept democratic results of elections care even a little bit about the safety of American people. At this point in human history, this upcoming decade is a crossroads for humanity. Late-stage capitalism has brought on many crises and injustices that is culminating in an ecological crisis that threatens the existence of humanity. This decade is absolutely crucial and will determine the future of humanity. Like, the decisions that we make now are going to determine whether our children and our grandchildren will be able to live. Conservatism has so far been unable to solve these crises and in fact seems hell-bent on preserving the status quo of 1950. But luckily, for the first time, the generation that was born in the 90s will have a powerful political say. Banning TikTok will be a middle finger from the ruling class to the youth. TikTok is obviously not innocent, but singling it out as the app to ban is incredibly xenophobic and really comes across as a thinly veiled attempt to curb the power of the youth. All social media platforms have issues and dangers because all social media platforms operate under capitalism. Under capitalism, only profit is prioritized. The negative effects of your business on society aren't built into capitalism. Instead of focusing on a single platform, we should be critiquing and changing the entire system that allows tech companies and rich CEOs to have enough unbridled power to spread fake news, threaten democracy, and control media narratives. No matter what, even if the gerontocracy does succeed in banning TikTok, Gen Z has shown that we are tech savvy and we are resourceful, and we will find another platform or outlet. It would be a huge shame if this happened, but luckily, since liberal politicians need the youth vote, it probably won't go ahead. But what the Conservatives aren't ready for is it's time to start pandering and responding to young people's demands. They don't want to. They're stomping their feet, they're throwing tantrums. They don't want to have to change their ways. They want to preserve the society that originally gave them power and wealth. And so they're already trying to suppress our vote and our voice. But it's up to us to continue to use our political freedom because it's still there, it still exists. They're trying to take it away, but we shouldn't allow them to. Political freedom should not be taken for granted. If we still have a vote, we still have a chance. So let's get out there and vote, and let's change things, finally. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'm Nergiz. I'm so glad you made it here. And if you like this video, don't forget to click like. It really helps a small channel grow. I'm really enjoying making this content, and I really hope you enjoyed it as well. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next week.